Hello and welcome to Auspol Explained. I'm like if Weird Al got really into explaining Australian politics instead of parody songs. That's right, I'm David, and today I'm here to explain how laws get made in Australia. So, laws are made at Parliament, but how does the process work? For the sake of this explanation, I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide for the federal parliament and then explain some of the differences for state and territories at the end. The fundamental process is the same, with a few technical differences. So, the Australian Parliament, or federal parliament, is made up of two chambers, or houses. The House of Representatives, which is also known as the lower house, and the Senate, which is also known as the upper house. Members of both houses introduce, debate, and vote on bills. A bill is a proposal for a law. While any member, including those on the opposition or crossbench, can introduce a bill, it's usually done by senior members of the government called ministers. Ministers have areas of responsibilities called portfolios, so a bill about the environment is introduced by the Minister for the Environment. Bills about the military are introduced by the Minister for Defence, and so on, etc. Regardless of who introduces it, be a minister or a backbencher, the steps are the same. Bills can be introduced in either house, but normally start in the House of Representatives. The lower house is where the government is formed, that's where most government members are, and if the bill involves spending money, it has to start in the lower house, because the Constitution says so. Currently, the House of Representatives has 150 members in it, and one of them is your lucky member. One of them represents where you live, so hey, you can look up your local member on the Parliament website and contact them if you've got some comments. A bill goes through 3 formal stages of debate called readings, which sounds boring and technical. But, fun fact, they're called readings because hundreds of years ago, members of the English Parliament weren't all literate, so the clerks had to read the text of the bill out loud for them, in full. A reading was literally a reading. Now, it's not, but the name stuck. So hey, cool literacy fact for you there. The first reading is the introduction, and not really a debate. That's kind of a formality, and nothing really happens other than, here you go. The second reading stage is the main debate stage, where most of the talking happens. And the third reading is a narrow debate on the agreed details of the bill. A vote is held at each reading. So members vote by saying aye or no to express their opinion, and if a majority vote aye, then the bill passes on to the next stage. Alternatively, a member may call for a division. That's when bells are rung throughout the building and any member who's not present rushes back into the chamber to vote. They move to the right of the chamber to vote aye and move to the left to vote no. The votes are then counted and a record of how people voted is written down, so you can look it up on the Parliament website. So it's possible to defeat a bill at any of these 3 reading stages, but in the House of Representatives you can expect the government to pass a bill because the government has a majority. But there are 2 other things that can happen in between the second and third reading. 1, referral to a committee, and 2, consideration in detail. These steps aren't debates. They're there so members can learn more about the bill and make improvements. Committees are made up of several members from across the political spectrum working together to examine something in more detail. So a committee can have, a couple of major party and minor party and independent members all working together in a non-antagonistic setting. Committees gather information by interviewing experts, interest groups, and the public. So a bill can be sent to a committee who then looks into it for a few months and then writes up a report with recommendations, which may include ways it could be changed. Alternatively, the recommendation might be, it's good as it is, but it's good that we double-checked it. Changes to a bill are called amendments. Add that to your vocab if you haven't already. Amendments are done during consideration detail. The government, opposition, or crossbench can propose amendments, which are then debated and voted on. Sometimes the amendments are based on recommendations from a committee report. Consideration in detail also has another purpose. Members can ask questions during it about individual clauses of the bill to learn more about it. They're literally considering it in detail. Advisors are brought in to assist the minister responsible in answering questions. The advisors aren't there to debate, they're there just to give whatever information is requested. They're from the public service, they are apolitical. Once that's done, the third reading happens, which is a final once-over to see if a majority of members are happy. If it passes another vote, then it goes to the next chamber. As most bills start in the House of Representatives, this usually means it's the Senate's turn next. Though just remember, this process can all happen in the other direction. The Senate has different members, called senators, for obvious reasons. If you live in a state, you've got 12 who represent you, and if you live in a territory, you've got 2. The reason for that is because of the Constitution. And I'll unpack that in another episode, but basically they are different people to the members of the House of Representatives, and the senators bring fresh perspective to double-check and review a bill. That means, once again, more debate. They go through the first, second, and third reading stages again. The Senate may also refer a bill to a committee to get more information and recommendations. It also has its own consideration in detail stage, though it's called Committee of the Whole, for a reason that's too technical to bother explaining here. That's not what you came for, but basically imagine it as a very similar thing. Asking questions, making amendments. An important thing to understand is that the government isn't expected to form a majority in the Senate, and almost never does that. So it can't pass a bill on its votes alone. The government needs the support of either the opposition or the crossbench. The opposition is the second largest party or coalition of members in the lower house, and the crossbench is literally everyone else. Minor parties and independents all get lumped together as crossbench. This means that the government has multiple options when it comes to negotiations for getting a bill through. Those negotiations might result in making some compromises, like amendments, or promising to spend more money on something else. And if you're thinking, oh no, that means it's out of the government's hand whether or not a bill passes, don't worry, most bills pass fine. Admittedly, not every single one of them, but I've read varying statistics that say between 140 to 200 bills are introduced to the federal parliament each year, and about 90 to 95% of them pass. Most have bipartisan support, aren't controversial, and no one really feels the need to make a big deal about them, which is why you cannot think of 200 bills off the top of your head. Parliament is actually way more collaborative and productive than people realize, but that's just not an interesting headline. This just in. No one yelled at each other today. Yeah, that's not going to make the news. So people think that members of Parliament just yell at each other. They don't do that. Most of the time, disagreements naturally do arise, and you are more likely, therefore, to hear about bills when the opposition or crossbench have an issue to raise with the media, like a criticism, or just outright oppose the bill. It's the job of every member of Parliament to scrutinise legislation, debate it, and, if they're not part of the government, to hold the government to account. Whoever forms government gets to set the legislative agenda, and then a diverse range of members of Parliament across the political spectrum must examine and discuss the details of bills to ensure that they work. So, remember when you go to vote to consider not just who you'd like to be in government, but who you'd like to be scrutinising the government's work, because that's what Parliament is about. So, a bill can't become a law, by the way, unless both chambers agree on all the details. So if amendments are made in the Senate, then it has to go back to the House of Representatives for further debate, or vice versa depending on where it started. Neither chamber overrides the other. I know that the Senate is called the upper house, but it doesn't mean that it has the upper hand when it comes to this. Neither chamber can force the other to agree, and if they can't come to an agreement, then the bill fails. The options then, once a bill fails, is to either A, give up and move on to the next bill, or B, reintroduce it again in 3 months' time and take a different approach to negotiations. But hey, If both the Senate and House of Representatives can agree on all the details of the bill, which again happens almost all the time, then there's one more step before it becomes a law. The bill is sent to the Governor-General to get royal assent, which is a signature on behalf of the King to go, yep, that's a law now. Ta-da! While the King can come here to Australia and do that himself, it's a long flight from London to Canberra, so he just appoints someone on the recommendation of the Prime Minister to be the Governor-General and do that for him. I wish I was important enough for someone to do my paperwork for me. Oh well. But ta-da! That's it. That is the basic process. The same basic idea applies to state and territory parliaments too. A bill must pass through all chambers in identical form. For most parliaments, that is two: a Legislative Assembly or House of Assembly for a lower house, and a Legislative Council for the upper house. However, Queensland, the Australian Capital Territory, and the Northern Territory only have a lower house, a Legislative Assembly, so a bill only needs to pass through one chamber to become a law there. The Governor-General doesn't sign bills passed by state parliaments. Instead, each state has their own governor. Similar title, similar role. They're all representatives of the King. For the Northern Territory, it's slightly different. Bills are signed into law by the administrator, not the governor, which is a similar but technically different role in a way that's difficult to explain in less than 30 seconds, so I won't. The ACT is even more different because they do a thing called notification, where they notify the public that a law was passed. It's not signed by a governor or administrator. But territories are literally just built different to states in several different ways, which I will explain in a different episode, so subscribe for that. To recap, bills can be introduced by any member of parliament, but are mostly introduced by ministers, mostly in the lower house. They go through multiple stages called readings. A bill can be referred to a committee for further investigation and fact-finding, and a report can be written up that may recommend changes. Members may propose changes to bills called amendments, which have to be debated and voted on, and for a bill to become a law, it requires a majority of members to support it in every chamber of parliament, be that 2 or 1 chambers depending on which parliament it is. Then it can finally become an Act of Parliament, also known as a law. And there you have it. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed learning about how laws get made. Don't forget to share, subscribe, comment down below what you would like to learn about next, and also thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon who got this episode a bit earlier than everyone else. If you'd like to support me, there's a link in the description. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.